Noble goals for noble souls, transforming our world to a better wonder to behold. No poverty, zero hunger, for the elderly or younger. Good health and well-being, good education, empowering women to become sensation. Clean water and sanitation, is it not the right of every nation? Economic growth, inclusive and sustained, through industry, innovation and infrastructure be gained. Reduce inequality for sure, make cities and human settlements safe and secure. Take urgent actions to combat climate change, conserve like below water, land, ensure we do not estrange. Justice for all, oh peaceful and empathetic nations. Let us all partner to achieve these goals and provide much needed salvation.
Hello there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today's podcast. Very good morning, good evening, namaste, hola, bonjour, keremet, terve, and maravan. This is Namya Joshi, your host for the day. Welcome to episode 113 of the podcast, Each One Teach 10, an amazing world of STEM, an inspiring venture where we'll be discussing that STEM is part of every day for every kid. We all will learn together how to build a STEM culture. Well, today's guest is someone who embodies the thoughtful intersection of technology, leadership, and humanity. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Christine Haskell. Well, there she is, who is the founder of Dative.Works, a leadership training and advisory firm that focuses on human, ethical, and systematic dimensions of technology. She is the author of two remarkable books, Driving Data Projects and Driving Your Self Discovery, and teaches in executive MBA programs at both University of Washington and Washington State University. During her time at Microsoft, she was at the forefront of big data and cloud computing, laying the foundation of their early AI strategy. Well, it's truly an honor to have you here with us today, Christine. So, how are you doing today?
Nice to meet you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Well, we do begin our podcast by asking this question. So, how's the weather like there where you are right now?
It's predictably overcast.
Okay, that's great to know. It's kind of getting really warm in here, even though it's like rainy season. But after it stopped to rain, so it gets really humid. But that's a challenge. Hopefully, we'll get winter soon. All right. So thank you so much for joining on the podcast, everyone, and thank you so much, Christine, for being here. My first question to you is: your work explores the concept of values drift. This term is
Mhm.
both intriguing and timely. Could you explain what it means and why it matters so much in today's changing world, which is digital?
Yeah, values drift is what happens when people, organizations, or even technologies gradually move away from the principles that they originally stood for. So it's often unintentional. I mean, it's not from malice. And in high pressure, fast changing environments, we tend to prioritize what's measurable, like speed, efficiency, outcomes, and over what's meaningful, like purpose or fairness or care. And over time, this creates a misalignment between what we say we value and what we actually do. So in our day-to-day, where decisions are increasingly made by algorithms or systems optimized for scale, values drift can happen quickly and invisibly. So, um, that's why reflective leadership, and regular course correction matter now, I think, more than ever.
That's really well said. I totally agree with that. Like you've talked it as a gradual shift away from original principles or intentions that particularly were in realm of technology or any educative sphere. So of course, as we can see technology is evolving, there are a lot of external factors like there could be market demands or societal changes, like you rightly said, that come into play, and the original purpose and fairness embedded in their design can easily be diluted. And this does, rightly said by you, creates a misalignment between the values that we actually was the reason why we started an organization and was the purpose to begin on a journey, but due to a lot of changes that actually push you towards making the decisions that have to align with today's rapidly changing digital world. But of course, that's when we have to focus upon how not to go to that and how we can actually be able to stand up today's to digital changing world, but at the same time, of course, propagate what we actually stood for so that we don't forget why we started and what's the reason and why do we have to do it for the people around us. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that.
Mhm.
So we all know that in a time when artificial intelligence is influencing everything from policy to education, that's where leadership has never been more critical. So, what role should today's leaders play in ensuring the ethical development and deployment of these technologies?
Well, let me ask you a couple of questions first, if I could.
Of
Do you have your
course.
cell phone handy? Like, do you have your phone close by?
Yes.
And if you were to just look at the interface of it, like your apps
Mm-hmm.
on it,
Yeah.
what is it that compels you first in the user experience of it? What do you
I
want to click
feel
on?
the app icons actually what compel me first, but when I click on first would be
Like
uh,
when your eye looks at your apps, like what is it
mhm.
that you look at? Where do you zoom in on first on the screen?
I think the first thing that I zoom in on screen would be the Internet Explorer or the one where we can search. But also, of course,
Do you have like little alerts on there at all? Do you get like little alerts?
no, because I don't have an Apple. It's Samsung, so
You
we don't
you
get.
know what?
It's Samsung, not iPhone. So I don't
Okay.
think.
You don't get little alert updates on your phone?
Oh yeah, like maybe that's another, like it's an SMS message that I do get sometimes on my phone number. That could be for bad weather, or it could be if there is any cyber frauds that are happening. So you have to be careful, or if there are particular, instances or nuances that we have to be careful for. So we do get those, but they're not like actually on the main screen. They come on like as
So
specific messages.
your apps don't have little alerts that show that you have an update on your app or anything like that.
Oh, update. I that's like it comes as an entire update for like the
Okay.
entire phone. So it's not
So
like specific app updates. Like if you're
so
updating it
when
together, it auto updates the
okay.
apps.
So when I'm looking at mine
Mm-hmm.
and I'm looking at let's say I'm looking at I have an instant message here. There's a little I've got messages waiting for me here and I've got um LinkedIn updates here, right? There's some I don't know if you can see this, but I've
If you
got
could
little
like
alerts that
decrease the brightness, maybe we could see it then.
that's all right. But it just shows that there's a little red dot where I've got updates that show that there's messages waiting for me, right?
Okay.
Within different apps. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
little bright red dot. And that bright red dot is the UX of that is by design. And it is the design is triggering kind of the same chemicals that like a dopamine hit would give your brain
Mm-hmm.
as like a cocaine hit. And that's also by design. It's designed to be addictive. And so my question, the intention behind my question was to just ask, what behavior do you notice that you have around your phone, and or do you notice that others have around their phone? Like how
Yeah, I
compulsive do
actually
you notice?
agree because I've seen also if it could be with any user, I get your question. So if you have any updates, your mind actually starts to think about reading those first and
Yeah,
leaving the task at hand. So you're actually, even if you try not to see it and if you have your phone on mute, but if you get
yeah,
to, your first priority would be to check it and then do your work at hand.
right. It can be distracting. And so you start this behavior of like, you start that type of
Mm-hmm.
relationship with your phone is the beginning of sort of a compulsive behavior, right? And and so the sort of multitasking and disruptive relationship that we have that is by design. And because the people that are building those apps are incented to drive engagement, they have certain business metrics that they're building against, right? And so they have incentives that are driving them, and they're driving your behavior. And so to your question, what role should leadership be playing in guiding the ethical use? Well, the question is that ethical behavior? Is that ethical? In the marketplace, in the capitalist marketplace, that's debatable, right? That's a subjective question. And
Mm-hmm.
that spectrum is very wide. And and so, you know, and so social media platform governance failures are not due to lack of frameworks or effort by the people within those companies. Apple, Facebook, Zoom, eBay, they all have very robust governance policies. But they also engage in a strategic neglect and addictive design incentives and leadership avoidance of long-term responsibility. Um, and so, we were just talking offline about these small acts. I was listening to your podcast and prep for this conversation, and your your principal, Pandy, Mr. Pandy, is that his name?
Miss Pupinder Kokia.
I didn't mark it down, but
Okay.
he was saying that small acts. You don't have to have like a huge. You don't have to do a huge thing with your life to have a huge impact. You can do small things. And I was like, oh, I wonder what some kind of student council, some sort of student group would look like in um, in a congressional setting. How would you get a student voice in what would the voice of the student look like in the EU Act or in a government setting where instead of the Zuckerbergs or the Satchas or the Big Ten talking to Congress, who doesn't understand what they're talking about, they would have to say it to the kids because the kids do understand the technology and say it to your face. I'm taking your data. Because and the bill of rights that the students are putting forth of like don't want you're I'm going to take your data to do this and this and I'm curious what that would what kind of impact that would have. Like that's a small act of students coming together for a bill of rights, and what would that look like as part of the EU Act, through a UNESCO or through a body like that. um, and so the real problem, as I see it, is sort of this institutional complicity around that. And that's a leadership problem. That's not a technical problem. This is not, there's no platform that's getting in the way of this. This is a set of decisions that need to be made around it. And so, the framing of reflection is not a nice to have, it's a moral and structural obligation of all institutions. And adaptive skills aren't soft. They're often what resist exploitive default behaviors. And so the cost of failing to pause, I think, is not just a missed opportunity, but in harm displaced onto others, the least empowered in the system to do anything about it. So, if you want to learn more about that UI, there's a Tristan Harris is the one that did the grayscale movement around I think he's an ex-Google UX developer. There's a Netflix series about it that talks the whole documentary about it. And all the leadership kind of stuff that went behind it. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, of course.
Very long-winded.
No, I actually agree. You've talked about leaders do have the vital responsibility to ensure that we use it ethically. And I've also pointed out that technology can be addictive because the incentive structures often drive behavior in very unintended ways. And of course, unfortunately, many leaders tend to overlook these nuances. And you also stress that leadership today must focus on, of course, the small, often neglected details that can really lead to meaningful change. And I really agree upon the point of student voices to of course, build more responsible and inclusive tech solutions. For example, we could have students as ethical co-creators. They could collaborate in AI projects that include ethical design thinking, or we could involve student councils or innovation clubs in discussions on AI use in schools. For example, probably integrating tools or chatbots that could help students and teachers. And of course, there should be a lot of focus and there should be creation of youth advisory boards. I feel like on AI ethics in the school that can actually help students to learn it at the forefront and also be able to help other people learn alongside them. And of course, if in this way, it would actually really help to foster critical AI literacy. And seeing these things, I feel we could focus on the ethical compass of where all the leaders would focus, that they're able to define clear boundaries around the fairness, the privacy, and they are able to uphold the human-centered values. And of course, they can have young people becoming the advocates for inclusive policy making for AI, artificial intelligence, because they're experiencing it themselves. And I feel as youngsters, they could realize what may be the problems and how we can, tackle them responsibly and ethically.
Yeah. And I think what, I don't think the students are the oppressed, but I think they are the lowest one in the system. And by definition, that is the oppressed. And one of the things that your principal was saying is the pedagogy of the oppressed, I think, is a great resource to be calling from this. I think one thing that every leader needs to ask before adopting AI is, who might be left out, misunderstood, or harmed by this tool? And if you can't answer that question, you're not ready to launch. Leadership is as much about protection as it is about innovation. And you have to have that well-rounded perspective, full systems perspective, before you move forward. Otherwise, you've got that collateral damage that you have to clean up after, if you even clean it up, and that's another problem.
True, I second that absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Christine. So one of the unique ideas you talk about is terminology governance in AI. I'd love for our listeners to understand this better. Like, how do the words we choose to name and describe AI systems influence the public trust and their understanding of it?
I think it was Carl Jung who said that language is a window to the soul. And if that's the case, then humans are wildly narcissistic because we love this image of ourselves. Right? And
Yeah.
I'm not a big proponent of making something in our own image, right? I think putting a face on AI is the wrong thing. Um, but language shapes understanding, and when we call AI intelligent and autonomous or human-like, we're creating a false impression of what the system actually does. This can lead people to overtrust and mesh, kind of bond with this technology in a way that can be unhealthy, or completely misunderstand its capabilities and limits, and which has happened on a number of occasions. And words are not neutral. Um, they carry assumptions, and those assumptions shape policies. They shape expectations, and they even they shape fears. Um, Clear, accurate, inclusive terminology helps build public understanding and trust and reduces risk and harm. Um, some of these misleading terms that we hear about AI are terms like sentient, self learning, autonomous agent. They make AI sound like it thinks or it decides like a person, and it does not. It's a big bag of math and it's probability. And if we talked about it like a big bag of math, half the people wouldn't use it because math is hard, right? And if we talked about these things in the mechanical terms that it is, um, a lot of that usage and hype would fall off, and that would probably be a good thing. But um, the the these godlike terms, I think, are really leading this thing astray a bit. Um, I think that the words that shape understanding and trust would be things like, you know, more neutral, just more neutral terms. Like, if the public believes that AI is neutral or all knowing, they're less likely to question it, I think, and that creates huge blind spots. So um, I just think we need clearer terms.
I I feel that's actually really true, because if you're talking to the point, that's when people can realize it better. And of course, you also talked about how language is the window to the soul, and that suggests that the terminology that we use deeply influences the public trust and understanding. So if you're assigning human-like qualities or faces to AI systems, it can lead to overtrust or unrealistic assumptions, which in may turn to affect a lot of policy decisions. And of course, there has been a lot of unnecessary fear or hype amongst people. And like you rightly said, that if you're advocating for more neutral, precise language that encourages clarity and deep understanding, so we're able to talk about the true nature of these technologies, and that's when we know how to use it and where to use it, and not expect too much, but also be able to know where to use it and how it's going to help you to make your work better and assess its nitty-gritties at the same time.
Yeah, I think that, we need to build literacy by starting to ask questions. And I think we talked about, um, there was this big push for curiosity and wonder a while back. And I'm all for that. I think, people wanted to make learning accessible. I don't know how it landed in India, but in America, it was all about wonder, like a child, and you know the wonder of a child, and like the wonder of a child's great, but learning is actually uh somatically, it's actually kind of a difficult process. Like real learning, transformational learning, is actually an uncomfortable process, and the childlike learning, the wonder learning, is the fun part. And
Mhm.
um the the we need both. We need that balance of being able to handle it in our bellies, and that and I'll just say Americans, like, we need to cultivate that, and well, maybe society, because it's happening everywhere, but we need to, um, a healthy dose of skepticism, I think, the skill of skepticism, coupled with curiosity. When I've been teaching it, I sort of use I try to bring people in on AI as like, this is like a cat toy, like the curiosity, let it lure you in, like with a cat, like it's a cat toy, but doubt everything that it gives you. Like, the skepticism has to quickly follow that wonder. And you must argue with it all the way down. Like, this is not anything that you can trust. You have to trust but verify the entire thing. In Microsoft, like early in my career, it was a really tough culture. But one of the tools that was prized, that made it such a tough culture, was called precision questioning. And it made it brutal. Like, you were basically argued with an inch of your life in every meeting. And But it was basically a basic logic tree all the way down until there was one person left standing. And that wasn't a fun experience, but you got to some kind of logic where you understood. You got to some answer. You got to some kind of logical conclusion, that both of you could understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of feeling you have to have with AI. And I don't I don't know how pleasant that will be for most people to understand that they're getting to some kind of truth. Is that making sense?
It actually
Um,
does. I agree because, like, if you're talking about precision questioning or inquiry-based learning, it actually is important that you are able to sharpen your critical thinking. Whereas it also helps you to drive more ethical awareness. That in AI and policy, the right question can, of course, expose the ethical blind spots, like you said, and
yeah,
asking who is affected or what data is being used and why. It's going to promote transparency, fairness, and inclusivity. So, like, if you're deploying AI in schools, a precise question would be like, how does this algorithm treat students from different socioeconomic backgrounds? So, like, of course, if you have to understand how to use AI and to be able to implement it, you need to get into the depth of it because surface-based learning won't help you a lot. So, like, I also totally believe in deep learning, and if that includes deep questioning, then why not? Because
yeah,
that's going to help you to know the ethical use of AI, and it's going to help you to enhance the AI assisted creativity and problem solving skills. And of course, it also is going to help you to become a digital citizen where you're able to know how to use technology for good and how to fact check everything, what is accountability, and how do you have to evaluate everything. So you don't have to just learn everything AI says to you. You can question it back and then be able to understand why is the reason that AI has answered in a way. And you could be able to assess that when you have more curiosity and precision questioning, like you rightly said.
yeah. And you can see it in the writing, like the just the lack of sophistication, and the Marcus, Gary Marcus has some really great thought. He had a word go around called copy pasta, which is just sort of another word for the slop that you're seeing. Everyone's sort of talking about the same idea, and they're
Yeah.
it's kind of going around the zeitgeist, and um, and you can just see various variations of the same theme, and it's just not like they're not adding any value to it. Like, there's just not it's not getting more interesting, it's getting less interesting. It's almost like a bad Xerox copy,
Mhm.
and the lesson should be to always add something to it. Like, you're just like, where is your uniqueness to this? That's the whole point, is
Yep.
for you to augment this. Like, where is your value to this? And if you're not bringing you to it, that's a red flag for you. And that's Like, how do you bring yourself, like, extract yourself? And I think that's the fear that people are finding. Like, they've been conditioned to compartmentalize themselves, and that's not their fault. That's where organizations have really done them a disservice, right? In the education
Yeah.
system. Um, and but they have to learn to extract that essence of themselves, and that's where reflection can really help. And
Yeah.
that's where I'm trying to, help the system change. Like, the system needs to help them deepen that skill. And data driven thinking, I think, has not helped, right? Data driven thinking is like, tell me what to do, tell me what to do, tell me what to do.
Mhm.
So
True. Of course, feedback and reflection is the key, and it helps you to know yourself better. And of course, it brings out your USP to the discussion or to any platform you might be involved in, where
yeah.
you can get your side forward and not just, of course, you can agree to somebody else, but you need to put in your input as well. Whereas that's when you are being creative and you're able to give out your point to the person.
And that's a muscle that has to be cultivated. I mean, everyone's got
Absolutely.
monkey brain when it comes to reflection. Everyone's
Mhm.
mind dances around, and it's not the zen that you're told it's supposed to be. No one has a quiet brain.
Of course.
And so you have to be, it has to be, it's just a muscle that has to be trained. Um, but it can be, with practice.
Of course,
So
practice makes us perfect. Thank you for sharing that.
not perfect, but
Of
yeah,
course.
practice helps.
Of course. Right. So, as someone who teaches future leaders in executive MBA programs, what are today's young leaders most curious about? And what, in your experience, do they often overlook when they are stepping into the roles that influence innovation?
Well, most of my students are graduate and exec students, so they're mid-career professionals, and they're deeply concerned with two things. One is doing unintentional harm with any kind of AI or digital strategies, and one is falling behind because they all feel like they're late. And that's something that I write about in the data projects book. Like, everyone feels like they're falling behind, and that's always been the case even before AI came on the scene. You look at any kind of maturity curve, and you automatically feel like you're at the bottom. And what I counsel people is that the middle is a sweet spot for a reason, and it's because the predictive modeling area is a very, very expensive part of the quadrant, and most people can't afford to be there. And that's why there's only 10 or 15 companies there investing in that space. So um, so they think they're going to do it wrong, or that they're not fast enough, and they feel pressure to innovate, and also the weight of that responsibility. And so that tension can create a kind of stuckness. So they're just sort of like, there's a paralysis that can set in, and then that can create a lot of fear-based decision making. And so, the opportunity is that um, they often miss that the leadership isn't about being first necessarily, because first can be expensive in its own way. It's about being grounded. And the most powerful thing that they can do is to build habits of, and this is where I go back to basics, and it this can be the advice that, like, no one wants to hear, or the right people need to hear. It's about build habits of reflection, go back to basics and fundamentals. But what does good look like for people, and not just for metrics? Ethics is not a blocker, it's a compass. And what does good look like for you in your market? And not in comparison to anyone else. There's a deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I know this is all US example based, but it's what I'm familiar with. But it might make an interesting example. They're called Zingermans, and they've been studied for like 40 years. And they were part of my postdoc research, and I've been trailing them forever. Zingerman's Deli has gone their own way the entire time. They They decided not to become a franchise. They built their business out of a community of businesses. Instead of building 20 of the same thing, they built 20 different businesses. So one deli, one bakery, one creamery, one, 20 different kinds of businesses that are all interconnected, and they remained regional. And the guy said, I never wanted to fly to Texas to, I just never wanted to fly around the country to check on a sandwich. And they wanted quality control, and they wanted to remain unique and, invest in their local region. And there's something to that. And he built a very unique business model as a result of it. And at the time, people thought he was crazy. This was in the late 80s. They thought he was bonkers. And then the sustainability and CSR movement came up, and he became a genius. And then the sustainability and CSR movement went away, and he was unique again. And all these things are fads. They're like chic, and then they're not, right? But when you know who you are, and you stick with who you are, it's just, you just are a constant. And he has a nice life. Like he knows who he is, and there. So he's written his own ticket. And I think that is in a world where so many people are externally defined and miserable, and he's everyone's miserable in their own way, right? Everyone has a bad day. He's never miserable in that way. He writes books, he's creative, he's tapped his creativity, he's self-actualized, he's he's be able to express himself. He's designed the company in his own. He's manifested, and I've talked to other people who are at a senior corporate, kind of a partner level in a Fortune 500 company, and they're like, I thought it'd be different. I feel hollow. I want to escape to a fjord and make cheese.
Yeah. Actually, that kind of feels like standing by what you believe. And of course, you've talked about like how today's young people, they're often curious and concerned about the unintentional use of AI. And actually also, like, this is not just AI, but it has been like for a long time, seeing my fellow mates as well feeling that they might fall behind in any innovation race. And they of course feel the immense pressure to constantly innovate, which can of course lead to a sense of being stuck or making fear-based decisions. But if you stand by something on which you're believing for, you don't have to always, you know, get influenced by every single situation. Maybe you can make a few changes here and there, but that doesn't mean that whatever decision you've taken at the point could be wrong. It could be influenced by environments or by different situations. But it takes me back to the point that you said earlier, that why did you start? That's something that one should never forget. And when young people see that as an opportunity for growth, they can highlight that true leadership is about what they can change and what they can chase as the next big thing, but also staying grounded at the same time, realizing why they want to do something, what is their purpose, and is it like to influence themselves to become a better person, or is it to make a change in the world, and of course help a lot of people to, you know, go ahead and of course learn a lot of things together with them. And of course that is when you're engaging in thoughtful reflection and continuously asking, like, what does good actually look like? It could be really different for different people, and the ones who crack it actually do well.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that everyone in a big company is not making change. That's not the case I was trying to make. It's just that making change from within takes a long time. And so building in those strategic breaks within the system, I think, is a good thing to do to slow that system down and give it give it a moment to pause and say, should we or shouldn't we?
Yeah,
Just
of
because
course.
we can, should we?
Of course, and of course, change comes within yourself first. So, do you think would it
Right,
work for yourself, and then
right.
you try to, step into the show the other person, like, and then try to reflect that
Yeah.
would actually work for you or not. I'm really liking, like, because I've never had such a deep level of discussion on my podcast before. I'm really happy to have asked these questions to you. And I'm actually like this kind of person who likes to discuss at this point with people. Maybe I've never had a chance to talk at this deep level on my podcast, and that's the first. And I'm really grateful to have asked these questions to you. And just
Oh,
to break a
thank
little
you.
ice, I have a fun question for you. What's your favorite cuisine?
I'm grateful to have been here. Thank you for asking me.
Thank you.
Oh, my cuisine. Um, uh, I like tapas because they're small and you don't have to commit.
What are those?
Tapas, Spanish tapas,
I haven't heard
Spanish
of those. Are
Spanish
they
little
like
plates.
tacos?
No, tapas, Tapas.
I haven't
They're
heard of
like
them.
little plates in Spain, like little plates. Does anyone on the chat know what tapas are? They're like
Let's
little
check.
tiny plates. They're served with wine.
Can you spell
Uh,
that again for me?
Tappas.
Oh, this. I got it. Okay. Like they're in small plates and
Yeah,
like the mixed olives, garlicky shrimp.
yeah,
Oh, got it. Understood. Got
yeah,
it.
yeah. Because
That's
then you
that's
can share
that's
them and
interesting. That's interesting. It's a good
yeah.
option, I feel, because if you want to have a light meal, though I'm a vegetarian, but it shows that on Google. So yeah, if somebody wants to try, can do that. For me,
Yeah.
it's always been the Indian cuisine. I just feel because
Well,
earlier for me it was probably Chinese when I was younger. Of course, every child loves to have because it might be different in different places, but in my region in the northwestern part of India, when children are usually younger, they really like. I think that's a generalization in a way that they do like to have Chinese, but as time goes by some of them really like start liking different cuisines. Me, it has been like the Indian cuisine because I think my grandmom and my mom make it really good. So
mm,
probably that could be a reason. But yeah, I like exploring unless it's vegetarian, I can try different cuisines.
well,
Thank you for
Italian
sharing.
is like really good Italian is
Oh
a
yeah,
classic.
pasta, pizza, of course.
Mm-hmm.
True. Thank you for sharing. I have another question to ask you. And like
Mm-hmm.
this podcast is built on the motto each one, teach 10. The idea that sharing knowledge has a ripple effect. So, what has been your one, it could be a mentor or a guiding light, and what is one lesson you hope your listeners, will carry forward and pass on to 10 more?
So what was the first question? What's been one what?
Your one mentor or any guiding
Oh,
light, and
one
what
mentor.
one lesson would you hope the listeners would carry forward and pass
Okay.
on to 10
All
more?
right. One mentor and one lesson.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I have a single mentor. I mean, the one lesson that I had was that I didn't have one mentor. I had several people that I had kind of dot my life. Like I didn't have that sort of lifelong experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had several teachers at different points. I had some coaches in college, like sports coaches, and that believed in me that things they saw things I didn't see in myself. And in graduate school, I had some professors who made a very deep impression. I'd say probably one in particular. She passed away. I only had her for a year, and she had ovarian cancer and passed away. And she could hold a room with tension and provide. Um, she could hold tension and made reflection safe and transformative and rigorous and not just soft and introspective. And I think, but I don't know, just part of leadership excellence. And it changed my understanding of what it means to show up well. And when I hold my adaptive skill trainings, that is what I aspire my clients to have for their experience. And I always have her in my mind. So I think one insight I wish every student would carry forward is that reflection is a leadership skill and not a performative act. And that it should be moderately uncomfortable and a core part of how we hold complexity and how we move forward with clarity. So
True that. Thank you. And I feel that is something everybody should stand by. And listening to you has reminded me of the fact that true leadership in the age of AI lies not in racing ahead, but in pausing to reflect, staying grounded in values, and of course, choosing clarity over the hype. So, thank you so much for being on my podcast today. It was a really great honor to have you here and have a very enthralling discussion. And I'm sure the audience, we've had a lot of comments coming in for you. So, thank you so much. And of course, the audience has enjoyed, and likewise, here
yeah,
as well.
let's stay in touch for sure.
Of course. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone,
All right.
for joining and listening. I'll see you in the next episode. Till then, each one, each time, have a nice day.